Good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. At least 11 people are dead and over 5,000 have fallen sick after a toxic gas leak at a plastic factory on the outskirts of Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh. The incident occurred at 3 a.m. when toxic gas started leaking from LG's polymer plant and reportedly spread over a radius of about 3 kilometers, affecting at least 5 villages. Early morning visuals showed dozens of villagers lying unconscious on the streets and trapped in houses near the factory. Ambulances, police teams and National Disaster Response Force was rushed to the area to control the situation. The Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy reached the spot, announced a compensation of 1 crore rupees to the families of the dead and 1 lakh rupees to those in hospital. He has also ordered an investigation into the incident. Prime Minister Modi called an emergency meeting with the Home Ministry and National Disaster Management Authority to take stock of the situation. An initial probe reveals that the factory had reopened for maintenance after availing emergency passes from the state government. It had remained shut due to the lockdown. The National Human Rights Commission has issued a notice to the Andhra government and has sought details of FIRs and the status of investigation.
What is the reason that's being looked at post this, for this gas leakage that we're looking at?
Let's understand this. A gas has leaked out. It leaked out under the watch of the management, and certainly the burden of proof lies with them. It's unfortunate when, with such positivity, we were trying to make sure that bringing back normalcy, responsible companies, when they behave such irresponsibly, certainly actions will be taken against them.
Right.
What I'm also trying to tell them, the management of LG, is this: your senior people, wherever they are, they have to respond and come down immediately to Visakhapatnam, sit on the premises and tell us exactly what were the protocols that you initiated. So we're actually sent out messages to the Korean embassy, telling them the urgency of this matter and telling that the LG people better respond to this.
So as of now, things are under control. I would say that the leakage situation is much better now, in the sense that the silo that was leaking is now down to minimal, and there is hardly any leakage there. But as I say that, I also underline that we will be there till that leakage is totally plugged.
Well, that is the unfortunate tragedy there in Vizag with that gas leak. Now, India's coronavirus count is closer to 54,000. While the last few days have seen a sharp rise in daily infections, we've also seen a rapid rise in testing. So take a look at the trajectory so far this month. Daily cases have been around 3,000 on an average, but daily tests have also gone up from around 60,000 to about 85,000 over the last couple of days. Now, even as daily infections rise, the deaths have remained largely steady and recoveries have risen. In fact, since the start of this month, daily deaths have been around 90 to 140. Daily recoveries have been steadily above 1,000 for the last 3 days, even touching 1,300 on the 5th of May. Top health experts believe the recent rise in cases is on expected lines, as India is now actively looking for virus carriers due to increased testing. Take a look.
The rise is anticipated because that's why we call it an epidemic. But there is also a problem here because the definition of what is a case is slightly changing. Now, earlier the cases used to be those who come with cough and breathlessness when tested, and if they are shown to be positive, we called it a case. That was the bulk of it, or some contact or travel. Now there is an active search for coronavirus carriers.
Pandemic has always followed a parabolic pattern. When there is a crescendo, the cases go on increasing, then it will reach a level, plateau, and then it will descend. So I feel we are very close to that particular plateau. And the fact is also true that in Mumbai we are doing tests at an alarming numbers. So the more you test, the more you are likely to get positive cases. In the terms of epidemiology, the doubling time, that is increasing, which is a good sign.
The doubling time has increased. Yes, there has been a rise in cases, but the recovery rate is also on the move up. No time for complacency, though, but we don't necessarily have to ring alarm bells and panic. That's the word in from experts. Now, India needs a calibrated reopening of the transportation sector, and a decision will be taken sooner rather than later, according to Aviation Minister Hardeep Puri. Speaking to me earlier today, Puri said aviation cannot be opened in isolation and reiterated his pitch for a gradual resumption of public transportation together. The minister backed airlines on not keeping the middle seat vacant, saying that the proposal is simply not feasible. Take a look.
Civil aviation cannot be opened up in isolation. We have a large economy. The civil aviation sector is the third largest domestic civil aviation, but you can't open the civil aviation sector when you are in lockdown. Domestic civil aviation can be opened in a slow and calibrated manner. How do you define slow and calibrated? I don't think even I have the answer. I think all of us will have to sit together. There are meetings taking place on this. I've said repeatedly that keeping the middle seat vacant is not an option, has not been an option for any airline anywhere in the world. The airlines already operate on very, very thin margin, and if you keep 1/3 of the aircraft empty, many of them may choose not to fly. I saw a clarification by one of the European carriers, which is very interesting, which says that, look, we will use masks, we will disinfect the aircraft, the masks will have high quality filters, and we will ensure that we minimize risk as much as possible.
Well, that's Hardeep Puri saying no decision has been taken on when the resumption will happen, but he believes that it needs to happen sooner rather than later, and it will need to take into account public transportation together, not just civil aviation in isolation. Now, Indian bankers are once again mulling the idea of building a bad bank that will tackle the NPA situation, which is likely to worsen further on the back of the COVID lockdown. Confirming the news, SBI Chief Rajneesh Kumar told CNBC-TV18 that bankers under the Indian Banks Association are working to create a bad bank. Lata joins us now with the details. Lata, there's been so much talk for so long about a bad bank, but is it likely to be a reality anytime soon?
They have a structure in mind, but we can't say that it is very close to fruition. It was just about 24 hours ago that the discussion has happened. They are expecting that an ARC, an asset reconstruction company, and an asset management company would be set up by the bankers, and the assets could be bought at, whatever, 20% to the rupee or whatever. And then if all the banks were to sell part of their loans to a particular asset, it's easier to sell it by a professional asset manager. They are expecting government help, either mostly as capital, but also for the government to bless it, but very, very preliminary. Let's listen to the SBI chairman himself, who explains why right now the bad bank has a better chance to succeed than before.
Well, these are some initial thoughts at IBA level, and by many members in IBA. We believe that this is the right time where a structure on the lines of bad bank, it can be worked out, because the provisions on the existing NPAs, most of the banks are holding very high level of provision. So a bad bank 3 years ago was not feasible, because the provisions were inadequate. So at least today we have the adequate provisions, and net book value is hardly 10 to 15% of the gross NPA.
Well, that's Rajneesh Kumar of SBI on the possibility of a bad bank. Remember, no decision has been taken. The IBA is working on this proposal. Directions from the government will be needed. Let's now shift focus to the issue of migrant workers. With industries facing a shortage of labour, many states like Goa, Karnataka, Telangana are asking migrant workers to stay put. Now, the Cyberabad police in Telangana has asked migrant workers not to leave while the lockdown is in force. Labour-intensive activities like construction have been restarted, and the state says that workers have been assured measures will be taken to house and feed them as well as their family. But many small companies are strapped for cash and struggling to pay salaries. However, in Ahmedabad, the district labour officer has issued a circular warning companies that they will face criminal cases if they cut salaries or delay salary payments for the month of April. Meanwhile, in a U-turn, Karnataka has announced it will restart trains for migrant workers from the 8th of May. The state faced flack for cancelling the trains earlier, citing the need to revive the economy. But MSMEs in Karnataka say that only 25% of companies have been able to restart operations due to the labour shortage, and as many as 50% of MSMEs could be forced to shut down without any relief from the government.
when the industry started and construction works also started, only our officials and others requested the migrant workers to be here, and works already started, you are not unemployed. Like that, request is going on. There is no intention to stop any train or anything. If anybody wants to go to their respective states, nobody is stop them.
So we have started from 4th after lockdown. Now we have started with a 33% of labor force, but only 20 to 25% of industries can able to start now, and also acute labor shortage because of they have gone out of district like that. So only 15 to 20% of labor force only coming to the work. So in this context we are facing a lot of labor problem.
Okay.
The industry leaders also agreed that we are going to pay the salary definitely, because if you take the works from them, then it is our duty to give the salary them also. They are making arrangements. Give them some time.
Well, that is the Karnataka minister. This is a complex issue and it requires thought, sensitivity and empathy from all concerned. In fact, there's another U-turn that Karnataka has done, like what has happened in Ahmedabad and other places. There was an order asking companies to pay up and pay salaries for the month of April or face action, but that has now been put on hold, something that the minister confirmed. Time for us to head into a short break, but on the other side, Future Group firms up its plans to trim debt, puts future supply chain on the block. More on that when we get back. Time now for a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. The government is planning to aggressively pursue investments from global companies looking at de-risking their businesses on the back of the COVID-19 outbreak. Invest India, an investment facilitation joint venture between the DPIIT and India Inc., will make individual pitches to about 1,000 global companies. Ritu Parnabhayan joins us now with more. Ritu, take us through the blueprint that's been drawn up. On what basis have these companies been shortlisted?
The primary objective of Invest India, which is a DPIIT and India Inc. joint venture, is to attract FDI into India. Since 2017, around $25 billion worth of FDI has come in through projects facilitated by Invest India. Now, Government of India believes that going forward, many global companies will be realigning their supply chains to de-risk their business model, and hence, Invest India has been asked to prepare a list of 1,000 companies, and these companies have been now shortlisted by Invest India according to our sources. 28 to 30 parameters have been used to shortlist these 1,000 companies, which includes a strong balance sheet, strong cash position as far as the balance sheet is concerned. Their need to basically have a alternate supply chain, the presence of their competitors in India, as well as government-to-government relations with the country in which these companies are based. Now, 10 sectors have been identified, and these 1,000 companies belong to these 10 sectors, which includes electronic systems design and manufacturing, auto and auto ancillaries, capital goods, as well as textile, mining, renewables, metal, pharma, as well as oil and gas. So these are the sectors which have been identified. Now, the countries in which have been targeted are basically US, Germany, Taiwan, France, and Middle East. These companies which have been targeted have their headquarters in these countries. Not only that, we've also been told that the government of India, through Invest India, is looking at such companies which have a strong export-led focus but are based in China, as in their manufacturing base is in China. Such companies have also been shortlisted. So, and it remains to be now seen how many of these companies from this list of 1,000 actually decide to make the decision to have their investments for their future investments in a country like India going forward. With that,
all right, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. And the government has asked 2 of India's largest earbud manufacturers to produce throat and nasal swabs for COVID testing. We learned that the 2 manufacturers have already started work on the synthetic swabs, which could be priced at 1/10 of the price of imported swabs so far. Kit manufacturers have been importing swabs from countries like China and the US. Priya joins us now with more. Priya, what are you picking up?
Well, to reduce dependence on countries like US and China for the import of nasal and throat swabs for COVID-19 testing, the Indian government has been speaking to domestic earbud manufacturers like Johnson & Johnson as well as Tulips to see if they can convert their existing facilities to manufacture domestically produced synthetic throat swabs for COVID-19 testing. At this point in time, we understand that Tulips has already received ICMR as well as NIV approval for the production of these nasal and throat swabs. They're aiming at about 2 million throat swabs per week is what we do understand. This is happening at the Ghaziabad facility. Johnson & Johnson is still in their R&D phase and will have to seek ICMR as well as NIV approval before commercial production of these throat swabs. Now, at this point, we understand that as far as costs are concerned, imported throat and nasal swabs cost anywhere between 30 to 40 rupees per piece, but if domestically manufactured, these swabs could cost anywhere between 2.5 to 3 rupees per piece, bringing down the cost of these swabs by about 1/10 if manufactured domestically. This will also bring down the overall costs of the VTM kits. So we'll have to wait and watch to what tune these costing of VTM kits will come down. But we did reach out to the companies concerned. Johnson & Johnson did not comment on our query, while Tulip said that they have received ICMR as well as NIV validation for the production of polyester swabs and are in full production at this point in time.
Priya, many thanks for joining us. With that, now a quick check of the market action. A volatile session ended with the Nifty giving up its hold over 9,200. All the gains clocked on Wednesday were also wiped out in the process. The Sensex ended the day over 200 points lower, with bank stocks leading the fall. Mid-caps have seen a relative outperformance, and that index dropped just 0.5%. Stocks like Reliance, Axis Bank and IndusInd Bank supported the market, while the HDFC Twins and Kotak Mahindra Bank dragged it down. Well, retail king Kishore Biani is learned to be working on a debt reduction exercise which involves selling stake in a couple of Future Group subsidiaries. Nisha is standing by with the exclusive details. Nisha, what are you picking up?
High debt concerns and high promoter pledge. These are the two important aspects Future Group is trying to address. First, by a sale of non-core asset like Future Supply Chain. That is put on the block, and there is enough interest coming in from the types of Stellar, even Delivery, and maybe Mahindra Logistics may also join the fray. So Nippon Express, remember, had invested at a high valuation. So they are also looking at getting in a partner so that Future Group can get an exit and also the much needed fund. There's a lot of speculation about Future Retail sale and whether or not Amazon can buy the stake. As per the government rules, they can buy only less than 10% stake. They already have 3.6% indirectly. Though, as per contract, Amazon and Future Retail have agreed that Amazon can increase the stake between 3 to 10 years of their investment, but that is going to be later on. At the moment, Future Group has reached out to Amazon, Premji Invest and some of the private equity investors for equity fundraising to sail through the present crisis situation. The bounce back in retail business after the lockdown is going to be a big deciding factor on that. And also remember, since there is a high promoter pledge in these companies, how the lenders are likely to act and therefore get aggressive on the recovery is going to be an important aspect in this deal.
Nisha, many thanks. That's the debt reduction plan there for Future Retail. Now, after British drug maker GSK successfully sold its entire 5.7% stake in FMCG giant HUL, the sale was effected through two block deals, a volume-weighted average price of 19.05 per share. According to the company's exchange filing in London, GSK has raised 25,480 crore rupees from the sale, making it the largest secondary trade on the Indian stock exchanges. The Hindustan Unilever stock ended 1% lower at the end of trade. Here are some of the other stories we're tracking this evening. The Yes Bank stock ended 7% higher, this even as lenders' net loss widened to about 3,700 crore rupees in the fourth quarter, and deposits slipped over 53% annually. Meanwhile, RBL Bank's profits fall 54% and total deposits slipped by about 1%. HCL Tech reported a solid Q4 performance with net profit jumping 23% year-on-year. The management does not give a revenue or margin guidance given COVID-related uncertainty, but it does expect growth to return in the second half of FY21. Kotak Mahindra Bank announced a 10% pay cut for employees earning above 25 lakh rupees a year. This comes just weeks after the bank's leadership team took on a 15% pay cut, and MD Uday Kotak opted to take just 1 rupee as compensation for the year. The government may offload between 15 and 18% stake in Hindustan Aeronautics and Bharat Dynamics to an offer for sale. Sources say this could net the government around 3,700 crore rupees. Over 3 million Americans filed for jobless benefits for the first time last week. This takes total job losses in the last weeks to about 33.5 million. The UK is likely to see the worst economic slump in over 300 years. The Bank of England predicts GDP will contract 14% in 2020, but adds that it expects this to be temporary, followed by a rapid recovery. The bank's MPC leaves rates unchanged. China's exports rise 3.5% in April, even as the global economy grapples with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Its imports are down 14.2% due to weak demand. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned to CNBC-TV18. The news will continue.